Welcome to Chapter 11, students. We're talking about substance use and addictive disorders in this chapter, and we're going to cover a variety of substances that cause disruption to behavior or mood for human beings. The overall cost of substance misuse in our country is $740 billion, and 135 million have used cocaine, heroin, or another illegal substance. In the past month alone, 32 million have used illegal substances, and a quarter of all teenagers have already used an illegal substance in our country. In a given year, 7.4% of teens and adults, more than 20 million, have a substance use disorder. American Indians have the highest rate of substance use disorders. Asian Americans have the lowest. Non-Hispanic white Americans, Hispanic Americans, and African Americans are in the mid-ranges. And only 18% of those with substance use disorders receive treatment from mental health professionals. So let's define a couple of terms before we continue. A drug is any substance other than food affecting bodies or minds, including alcohol, tobacco, and caffeine. Substance intoxication is a cluster of changes in behavior, emotion, or thought caused by substances. And this is from the DSM-5. And substance abuse disorders is when we actually develop maladaptive behavior patterns and reactions that are caused by repeated substance use. When we think about what is a substance use disorder, it's when an individual displays a maladaptive pattern of substance use leading to significant impairment or distress. And there's the presence of at least two of the following symptoms within a year period. And I'll let you take a look at these. And you could see that tolerance and withdrawal are the last two symptoms, and they are some of the most problematic ones, because when we take a substance and we get dependent on it, oftentimes we need increasing doses of the substance to produce the desired effect. And then withdrawal occurs when we cut back or stop the drug, and these are unpleasant and sometimes dangerous symptoms that cause people to want to take the drug more. The first class of drugs that we're going to talk about is depressants, and these slow the activity of the central nervous system, reducing tension and inhibitions, interfering with judgment, motor activity, and concentration. And the most widely used ones are alcohol, sedative hypnotic drugs, and opioids. So we'll talk first about alcohol. 2 billion people worldwide consume it. Half the U.S. residents consume it. And all alcoholic beverages contain ethyl alcohol that's absorbed into the blood through the stomach lining. It takes effect in the bloodstream in the CNS, and it creates, when people get dependent on it, a clinical picture that involves regular consumption and reliance that affects cognition and social life and work behaviors. Individual patterns vary, but there is damage in various structures of the brain, with impairments in memory, speed of thinking, attention skills, and balance, and also the tolerance and the withdrawal that we've seen. And the most severe withdrawal symptoms have to do with delirium tremens, which cause confusion, shaking, visual hallucinations, and sometimes withdrawal can even be fatal. Half of all campus sexual assaults involve alcohol use, and so when we're thinking about college life, we need to be aware of that. 700,000 students are physically or emotionally traumatized or assaulted yearly by student drinkers. 2,000 college-age deaths are tied to binge drinking. Those who live in fraternity houses and have other, kind of party or high-risk behaviors, or were binge drinkers in high school, are most likely to binge drink in college. And although there are efforts to create substance-free dorms, efforts to change aren't fast enough in coming. The next type of depressant is the anxiolytic or sedative hypnotic drugs. They produce relaxation and drowsiness. Low doses calm people and high doses put them to sleep. Barbiturates used to be the drug of choice for this purpose, but now we rely on benzodiazepines primarily. They are safer and less likely to lead to some of the unwanted effects. Long-term use by the elderly, however, that can cause severe cognitive impairment, and even still, as many as 17% of the elderly population are prescribed benzodiazepines, including 40% in nursing homes. They do increase GABA activity for calming purposes, but in high doses they can cause intoxication and lead to a sedative hypnotic use disorder. Opioids are another class of depressants. They include natural ones and synthetic ones. They're known collectively as narcotics. By 1917, opioid-derived drugs were deemed addictive and illegal in the United States. Many are smoked, inhaled, snorted, injected, or swallowed. They cause CNS depression, and the drugs attach to endorphin-related brain receptors, which brings lots of very, very good feelings in the body. Opioids have different strengths, speeds of action, and tolerance levels. They are prescribed primarily for pain. 86 million over age 11 have taken them in the past year, 12% of those being illicit. And there are these three classes of medical opioids. Opioid use disorder develops quickly in many people. After just a few weeks of use, people can be dependent. Tolerance and withdrawal symptoms are seen. Early withdrawal symptoms become characterized by anxiety and restlessness. Later symptoms include twitches, aches, fever, vomiting, diarrhea, and weight loss. And increased doses are required to avoid this withdrawal. Stimulants are the next class of drugs that we're going to talk about. They increase the activity of the central nervous system. They increase blood pressure, heart rate, and alertness, and they produce rapid behavior and thinking. The most common stimulants are cocaine, amphetamines, and caffeine. And caffeine is not considered a drug that can be classified as addictive in the DSM, but we do see that people become addicted to drugs like Red Bull and other things that have high levels of caffeine. Cocaine is the most powerful known natural stimulant. It produces a euphoric rush of well-being followed by a letdown. It increases the supply of dopamine at key neurons throughout the brain, as well as norepinephrine and serotonin. It can be snorted, injected, or smoked, and it's been tried by 40 million people. The effects of high doses include intoxication, psychotic disorder, and a depression-like letdown. More powerful, cheaper forms have been available since 1984, where people freebase, where they set it on fire and they use crack. Stimulant use disorder is when the stimulant substance dominates the individual's life. It does lead to poor functioning in social relationships and at work. Tolerance and withdrawal reactions are tied to increased doses, and annual rates among people older than age 11 are seen. Disorders centered on cocaine are at 0.4%, and those on the amphetamines are 0.6%. Hallucinogens or psychedelic drugs are the next variety that we're going to talk about. They produce powerful changes primarily in sensory perception. There are natural ones like LSD, mescaline, psilocybin, and MDMA or ecstasy. LSD is one of the most powerful of these. It brings on hallucinogen intoxication. There's altered sensory perception where you hallucinate. The effects don't wear off for about 6 hours, and it produces these symptoms by binding to serotonin receptors. Hallucinogen use, about 10% of the population is estimated to have used hallucinogens at some point in life. Current users are around 0.2%. LSD with tolerance and withdrawal are rare, but the danger is in long-term effects of like self-injury, having bad hallucinations or flashbacks. Cannabis is another type of drug in this general class that's produced from varieties of hemp plants. Hashish and marijuana are two of the ones. The major active ingredient is THC, and its potency is influenced by environmental conditions. When it is smoked, it produces a mixture of hallucinogenic, depressant, and stimulant effects known as cannabis intoxication, and the effects last from 2 to 6 hours. Cannabis use disorder is influenced by regular use, and it is part of the social and occupational lives of 1.6% of people in the U.S., including lots of high school students. Current varieties of marijuana are 7 times more powerful than those found in the 1970s due to higher THC content. Dangers involve tolerance and withdrawal, occasional panic, accidents in automobiles, and decreased memory while high. And there are long-term health problems and reproduction problems that occur from cannabis use. So what causes substance use disorders? We won't cover treatments, but we do, you can see those in Achieve, but we do want to cover what causes substance use disorders. Sociocultural views take a look at the environmental conditions, like living in stressful socioeconomic situations, having families that tolerate drug use, or being confronted regularly by other kinds of stress. In the psychodynamic view, people who are most likely to develop these disorders have powerful early years of dependency needs and display a substance abuse personality. Cognitive behavioral views are people who look at people who are most likely to develop these disorders as being operantly conditioned by tension and reduction, the rewarding effects of the drugs, meaning that they get self-medicated. They have rewards-produced expectancies that the substances will be rewarding, so they take them over and over again. They are influenced by classical conditioning when cues or objects are present during drug use, like seeing a pipe or something like that. So it cues them to use the drug. Biological views are also prevalent. Biological factors such as predispositions genetically, neurotransmitters, and brain circuits play roles. In terms of genetic predisposition, there is a similarity of alcohol preferences among alcohol-preferring animals and their offspring that has been found in research. Alcoholism concordance rate is found in identical twins, and then biological parent and adoptee child alcohol abuse rates have been studied as well, and those are different. The abnormal form of dopamine 2 or D2 receptor gene in people with substance abuse disorders using molecular biology techniques has also been studied. There is a neurotransmitter-focused explanation of drug tolerance and withdrawal symptoms. So we know that drug withdrawal symptoms are caused by cutbacks in the brain's production of particular neurotransmitters during excessive and chronic drug use. So there's lower GABA production, lower endorphin production, and reduced anandamide production for alcohol, cocaine, and marijuana, respectively. The biological views involve brain circuits, like the reward circuit, the pleasure pathway in the brain. It just keeps getting hit over and over again when people use drugs, and dopamine is the key neurotransmitter in that brain circuit. Drugs stimulate structures directly and indirectly, and each time it happens, the brain becomes more and more craving of having the drug one more time. And also in the biological view, we have incentive sensitization theory. When substances repeatedly stimulate the reward center, the center develops a hypersensitivity to the substances. And then the reward deficiency syndrome says that the reward center is not readily activated by normal life events, so the person turns to drugs to get stimulation. And that is what I have to offer today on substances.